What is going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Underdog Podcast. Today, I am here with you guys for my Week 5 picks. We will start with the Thursday night matchup, going all the way to the Monday night matchup, breaking down all of these matchups, who I think is going to win, what are the keys to victory for both sides, offensively and defensively, taking a look at the spreads in the game, a little bit of betting inside as well. So without further ado, let's get right into this, starting off with our Thursday night divisional matchup tonight. We have the Los Angeles Rams hosting the San Francisco 49ers. The Rams knocking off the undefeated Indianapolis Colts last week, and the 49ers losing at home to the Jacksonville Jaguars for their first loss of the season. So let's start with the Rams here. I think offensively, the Rams just need to take care of the football on Thursday night here. The 49ers are currently down Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall, and Jawan Jennings, three big pieces to their offense. So I think if you just take care of the football, continue to get the ball to Puka Nacua and Devontae Adams as they have, I think that offensively, they'll move the ball efficiently and be able to score points against this 49ers defense. And I think defensively for the Rams, the biggest weakness that San Francisco has shown through the first 4 games in the season is being able to pass protect. And with this good Rams defensive front, I think that they're going to have success against this 49ers offensive line, who has really struggled in that aspect of the game. I think those are my keys for the Los Angeles Rams to get it done tonight on Thursday Night Football. Then going over to the other side of the coin with the 49ers, I think they're going to have to heavily lean into Christian McCaffrey in this game. They've been somewhat avoiding that, of limiting his touches because of the fact that he missed all but 2 games of last season due to the Achilles tendonitis. So I think that they're going to really have to lean into him this week in order to have a shot against a very good Rams team. I also looked at the Mac Jones to Kendrick Bourne connection from back in their days of, in New England. So I think that if they can, get on the same page here and make some plays, that will also give them an opportunity to move the ball, down the field in terms of a passing game. And then defensively here for San Francisco, I think that you have to keep this Rams offense off the field as much as possible, whether that's creating 3 and outs, creating turnovers. I think that that's your best shot of victory here against, really good Rams team, like I said, shorthanded tonight. The Rams are favored by 7.5 at home. I like the Rams taking this one and covering the 7.5 points here on this Thursday night football game. Moving on to our next matchup here, we have our first London game of the season. We have the Minnesota Vikings and the Cleveland Browns. Starting off with the Cleveland Browns, who are technically the home team here across the pond in London. Cleveland lost last week to the Detroit Lions, but we have a new quarterback. We have the NFL debut of Dylan Gabriel. I think for Cleveland's best shot to win this game, I think you have to get success on first and second down, not putting yourself behind the sticks, whether that's in the run game with Quinshon Judkins, Jerome Ford, and Dylan Sampson, or it's through quick-hitting passes with Dylan Gabriel. I think that would be the best way to move the ball efficiently, especially against a really well-coached defense that Minnesota has via Brian Flores. And then I think defensively for Cleveland, it's continuing to play through them. I mean, this defense is one of the best, if not the best defense in the NFL so far this season. It's led by Myles Garrett. It's led by Denzel Ward. If the defense can make a bunch of plays on this offense of Minnesota, who struggled last week against Pittsburgh a little bit to move the ball and generate points, I think that this defense, any given Sunday, if they can play to the ability that they're capable of, gives them a shot to win this football game. And then as far as the Vikings are concerned, I think that you have to establish some sort of a run game. We know that Cleveland is the best rushing defense in the league right now in terms of yards per game. You have to get them to at least respect your run game. Kevin O'Connell is big on the, run first, play action offense, especially with Carson Wentz out there as your quarterback. I think it is advantageous to you to get respect in the run game with Jordan Mason and Xavier Scott, and that'll open up the ability to throw the ball, get the ball to Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, who are two of your bigger playmakers on this football team. And then I think defensively for the Minnesota Vikings, it's taken a page out of Jesse Minter's playbook last week. Jesse Minter didn't pressure Jackson Dart a lot, using the blitz. He used a lot of stunts to create the idea of pressure in front of Dart and to make him see jerseys flash in front of him and not necessarily, there be actual pressure there. If you can simulate that pressure, not even needing to blitz a ton, I think that you're going to have success against Dylan Gabriel and the Cleveland Browns offense. Looking at the line for this game, the Minnesota Vikings are favored by 3.5 across the pond in London. I like the Vikings to win this game and cover the spread. I think they're just going to be too much for them, too much for Cleveland to overcome, especially Cleveland offensively against that tough Minnesota defense there. Moving on to our next matchup, we have a pair of 1-3 teams here between the Baltimore Ravens hosting the Houston Texans. The Ravens coming off of a beatdown against the Kansas City Chiefs where they fell to 1-3, and I think if you're the Baltimore Ravens, Lamar Jackson's probably not going to play in this game. So that leaves you with Cooper Rush as your starting quarterback. You have to establish that run game with Derrick Henry. You have to get back to week 1 Derrick Henry where he was running all over the Bills, especially against a really tough pass defense in Houston. You don't want to be relying on Cooper Rush to win you the football game. He's shown to be a capable backup and play within structure. But if you can't establish that run game with Derrick Henry and you have to rely on him winning you the football game, it's going to be a tough ask for Cooper Rush to win you the football game. And then I think, defensively, with them being super beat up, no Roquan Smith, no Marlon Humphrey, no Nnamdi Madubuike, potentially no Nate Wiggins. I want to see this defense, against a struggling offense in Houston. I think the biggest thing you have to do is create pressure. We've seen C.J. Stroud in the 2 times that he's played the Baltimore Ravens really struggle against this team. I think that you need to continue that trend. You need to continue to make him struggle against this team. Because that's the only way that you're going to, really play good defense, honestly, because I just don't know if they have enough guys in the back end to stop the pass with just their secondary and rushing 4. And, with Roquan out, the green dot guy, I think it's going to be tough for them to stop the run against Houston, even though their run game isn't fantastic. Moving over to Houston's side of things, I think that this is the opportunity for them to really get a groove with the downfield passing game. They haven't been able to establish that all year, and I think C.J. Stroud has the opportunity here against a, ravaged with injuries secondary of Baltimore that, he can kind of unload, especially to Nico Collins, who's somewhat had a slow start to the season. Get Jaden Higgins involved, get Jalen Noel involved, get Christian Kirk involved, who looked good coming back from the injury, the hamstring injury that he had. So I think that that's the opportunity there for Houston. And I think if you are them defensively, it's selling out to stop Derrick Henry and making Cooper Rush beat you. Like I said, Cooper Rush is a good quarterback when playing in structure, but if you have to rely on Cooper Rush to just flat out win you the football game, it's going to be a tough ask. I think that that's the way to go if you're D'Amico Ryans in this Houston Texans defense. Taking a look at the line here, it's essentially a pick'em. Houston is favored by 1.5 on the road against Baltimore. I'm going to go with Houston here. I just don't know what this Ravens team is going to look like, missing all those guys, and without Lamar Jackson, that's a brutal blow to the offense. I think that Houston got some momentum last week against Tennessee, both offensively and defensively, and I like them to take this one on the road against the Baltimore Ravens. Moving on to our next matchup, we have the Indianapolis Colts hosting the Las Vegas Raiders. The Colts suffered their first loss of the season last week on the road against the Los Angeles Rams. And I think in that game, the biggest, thing that jumped out to me offensively was Jonathan Taylor struggled to get, going in that game. They'd got him going really well in the first 3 games. I think if they get back to Jonathan Taylor here, establish more of a balance in the offense, Daniel Jones kind of had to be the engine that ran that offense, and I think this offense functions better when you have Jonathan Taylor being that engine. I think that the Colts will see a lot more success here against the Raiders than they did the Rams. And then defensively, if you are Indianapolis, I think it's forcing this team into passing situations. We've seen Geno Smith struggle a little bit with turnover where he plays to start the season. He's been forcing it a lot because he feels like he has to. I think if you put him in that situation, I think he's going to force, balls into tight windows and allow you to make plays in your secondary in order to, come away with turnovers and get your offense an extra possession or two in this football game. And then moving over to the Raiders side, who lost a close one at home to the Chicago Bears. I think that they really got Ashton Genty going last week for the first time all season. I think they need to continue that trend. I think that that's their best, foot forward, is being, more of a run-first offense, and then, kind of letting, the play-action game and the passing game kind of, flow as is. So I think that if you can establish the run like you did against Genty last week, they had good success against Chicago. They just, a couple of bad turnovers, kind of a couple bad bounces, led them to losing that football game. I think that's their best opportunity offensively and defensively in this game. I think you really need to rely on Max Crosby, Tyree Wilson, and the guys up front to provide that pressure on Daniel Jones. We saw the Rams do that last week, and it forced a couple of turnovers. I think that if Max Crosby can, take advantage of the matchup there with Bernard Raymond, I think that the Raiders can take advantage of that pressure caused by Crosby, force Daniel Jones to make some mistakes there. The Colts are currently favored by 6.5 at home. I like the Colts to win this game. I think I would stay away from the spread in this one. If I were you guys, if I had a gut pick, I'd probably go with Las Vegas. I think it's probably going to be a little bit closer game than most people expect. Moving on to our next matchup here. We have the New York Jets hosting the Dallas Cowboys. The Jets coming off of a Monday Night Football loss to the Miami Dolphins. I think in this one for the Jets, we've seen them establish the run in the first 4 weeks of the season. They've done a really good job of that. I think you need to attack this secondary, and that's easier said than done with Justin Fields as your quarterback. But I think if he can, find Garrett Wilson whenever he can, I think that's going to provide the Jets the best chance to win. We've seen how Dallas has struggled to stop the pass, at the beginning of the season. I think that is the, best way that the Jets can attack this defense is through the pass. Defensively for the Jets, and I'll throw the Cowboys in, both of these teams have really struggled to defend the pass. We just talked about that with Dallas. The Jets have been the same way. I think whichever team doesn't, is able to get the other team's able to slow down the other team's passing game, and this one is going to have the best opportunity to win. That is easier for Dallas because they're going up against Justin Fields, who is not as good of a quarterback as Dak Prescott. So the Jets are really up against it here, and that's going to be a tough matchup for them. Can Aaron Glenn put the secondary in a position to succeed against Dak Prescott and the Cowboys? We'll find out. So we kind of talked about Dallas already after coming off the tie with Green Bay in overtime at their home place. We talked about their defensive game plan. I think offensively for Dallas, you need to continue to let Dak Prescott cook. He's been amazing through the first month of the season. Him and George Pickens got on the same page last week. You saw how special that connection was. Jalen Tolbert had a great game last week as well, mixing in Jake Ferguson, and then the run game has also been pretty good. But letting Dak Prescott just eat is going to be your best opportunity to win, is on the right arm of Dak Prescott. Looking at the line for this game, Dallas is favored by 2.5 on the road against the Jets. I'm going to take Dallas here. I think that they just have the better offense equipped for this shootout that I'm kind of projecting here. I would take the over in this game if you're into betting, and I would take Dallas to cover this spread as well. Moving on to our next matchup, going down to the Bayou in Louisiana, we have the New Orleans Saints hosting the New York Giants. The Saints coming off of a loss to the Buffalo Bills on the road, but they looked probably the best that they have all season. Saints looking for their first win at home here. I think the best thing to do is we saw them really get the run game going, albeit against a pretty lackluster run defense in the Buffalo Bills, but Kamara had over 90 yards. Kendre Miller got involved in this game. I think if you can continue to do that this week against the Giants, especially because they have a really, really good pass rush, and to kind of, offset that pass rush by running the football, getting them in good, second down, third down situations, and then opening up the pass there with the play action shots to Rashid Shaheed, to Chris Olave. I think that's the best opportunity that New Orleans is going to have to win this game. And then as far as defensively, I think what I said earlier about, the Minnesota Vikings game plan is using stunts to your advantage with Jackson Dart, making him feel pressure that isn't actually there. And that's, Easier said than done with this group of pass rushers that's really struggled to start this season, but I think that that's what the Saints have to do in order to make Jackson Dart uncomfortable and have him make mistakes. I think that the Chargers did a decent job of doing that. I think that the Saints can, if they can replicate what the Chargers did and improve upon it, I think they have an opportunity to win this football game. And then in terms of the Giants' game plan, coming off of their first win against the Chargers, I think that you still have to lean into Cam Skattebo as your main offensive weapon, particularly with Malik Neighbors out for the season with a torn ACL. I think that Skattebo, like the last couple weeks, has really been a driving force for that offense. He's provided a spark. Dart did that as well last week. I think their tandem, Dart is super athletic. I think if you lean into his legs too, then I think that will give them an opportunity to, kind of settle them down a little bit and then, sprinkle in the passing game, with Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton among the other pass catchers that they have there. And then defensively for the Giants, Shane Bowen kind of turned a notch up last week. I mean, he was really getting that pass rush dialed up, really making Justin Herbert feel uncomfortable. So I think that in order for them to win this game, I think they have to continue to do that. Make Spencer Rattler feel uncomfortable, force him to make mistakes. They forced Herbert to throw 2 interceptions. One was a really good play by Dexter Lawrence. The other was a bad throw by Herbert. I think if they can do that, they will have the upper hand in that matchup this week. The Saints are actually favored in this one by 1.5 at home. I'm going to take the underdog New York Giants to get it done on the road here for their second straight win against the New Orleans Saints in the Superdome. Moving on to one of the premier matchups of the week, probably the premier matchup of this 1 o'clock slate. We have the Philadelphia Eagles and the Denver Broncos. Starting off with the Eagles, who improved to 4-0, one of only 2 undefeated teams left, beating the Tampa Bay Buccaneers on the road. In this matchup, I think that the Eagles actually need to lean into their run offense in this one. I know I've kind of been advocating for them to balance out their offense, but I think with, Surtain and that pass rush that has been so far the most efficient and the best pass rush this year for the Denver Broncos, I think leaning into the run game with Jalen Hurts, with Saquon Barkley, is going to be the best way to slow down that pass rush and to, not give Patrick Surtain and that secondary opportunities to make plays on the back end. And as far as defensively, I think if you're Philadelphia, Denver has really done a really good job of establishing the run game this year. I think that Philly needs to lean into stopping the run game with that front seven to give them the best opportunity to put themselves in a position to win. I think that if you make Denver a pass-first offense and make Bo Nix try and beat you, it's going to be a tougher day at the office for the Denver offense rather than, trying to stop the pass and having them lean into the run game that they've done, such a retooling of this offseason to make sure that they actually have a viable run game rather than last season where they, didn't have one. And then from the Broncos' perspective, after coming off a beatdown of the Cincinnati Bengals on Monday Night Football, I think if you're Denver, you're going to win this game by running the football with J.K. Dobbins and R.J. Harvey. We saw more of a split carry backfield for them, last game with 16 carries going to J.K. Dobbins and 14 going to R.J. Harvey. I'd like to see them keep that balance this week. I just think if you're going to get in a drop-back passing game with Bo Nix, especially against a Vic Fangio defense that you're not going to succeed as well, I would like to see them continue to, be a run-first team and then, set up the play action and quick passing game from there. And then defensively, I think that you need to get this team in obvious passing situations so you can use that elite pass rush combined with that elite secondary. I think that if you are letting them get the upper hand on first down, that you've lost the game. I think first down's the big key down here for Denver. If you can put Philadelphia behind the sticks, you have more of a shot to win this game. Looking at the spread for this one, Philadelphia is favored by 4.5 at home. I like them to win and cover in this one. I think they're just going to be too much for the Denver Broncos. I like the matchups for them this week. Moving on to our last 1 o'clock slate game, we have the Carolina Panthers hosting the Miami Dolphins. Starting off with Carolina, who got abused against the New England Patriots on the road last week. Without Chuba Hubbard is what it sounds like they're going to, be without him this week. He's missed the last 2 days of practice. They have not been able to run the football very well, and they have a capable backup in Rico Dowdle, who was a 1,000-yard rusher last season for the Cowboys, albeit credit to the offensive line in Dallas. They were, tremendous last season. I think that you have to establish the run game here if you are the Carolina Panthers. I think that they have not done as well of a job as they can to run the football, and I think that's putting more pressure on Bryce in the downfield passing game. So I think that's the big key here for Carolina. And then I think defensively, with no Tyreek Hill for the Miami Dolphins, I think you need to keen in on Jalen Waddle. You need J.C. Horn to follow him around. He needs to win that matchup this week. You need to have somebody else beat you, whether it's Devon Achane as a pass catcher or in the run game, whether that's Darren Waller or Malik Washington. You just can't let Jalen Waddle beat you this week. I think that's the key matchup. If J.C. Horn can keep him in check, then I think that is an advantageous thing for the Carolina Panthers this week. And then moving over to the Miami Dolphins, who picked up their first win of the season at home against the New York Jets. I think that if you're, looking at them from their offensive game plan, I think if you're Mike McDaniel, you have to get Jalen Waddle the football. I think, that's the key matchup in this one, like I was saying, for the Panthers defensively. If you can get Jalen Waddle the football, I think you have, the best opportunity to win this game. I do, I still like Devon Achane, and I like Darren Waller, and I like Malik Washington. I think one of those other guys is going to have to step up as well, but if you can just get the football to Jalen Waddle, I think it makes your life a whole lot easier. And then defensively, Miami actually developed a pass rush last week, and I think against a, injured Carolina Panthers offense, if they can, pressure Bryce Young and force him to get off his spot and make mistakes, I think that's the best thing that you can do if you're the Miami Dolphins. We saw some sort of life from that pass rush last week, and if they can continue that into this week, I think that gives them an opportunity to win this game. So looking at this one, it's another, essentially a pick'em. Miami's favored by 1.5 on the road. They have, good amount of momentum coming into this game, but I'm going to take the Panthers at home. Despite probably not having Chuba Hubbard, I think that I'm going to take Carolina to win this football game. I think that, they just... There's something about this one that, I'm not super confident in picking, but I think I'm going to take Carolina in this one. They played really well at home last time against the Atlanta Falcons. I think I'm going to take them to win this game here. Moving on to one of our premier matchups and the premier matchup of the late afternoon slate, we have the Seattle Seahawks hosting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Seattle coming off of a big-time win against Arizona on Thursday Night Football. I think in this one you have to continue to, give Sam Darnold the protection that he needs to play the way he's been playing. Sam Darnold has been awesome this season, but shout out to the Seattle Seahawks O-line. I felt like they've played really well in the first month of the season with, really low expectations coming into the year. They've struggled a lot pass protecting. I think they're going to be the key in this one with, Todd Bowles, who's really good at simulating pressure and, with his stunt design and blitz design and everything. I think that they're going to be the key for Seattle in this game. And then defensively, I think if you are Seattle, you saw Philadelphia do a really good job of stopping Bucky Irving and Rachaad White in the run game and forcing Tampa to really be a pass-first offense. They got behind in that game and they really had to throw to get out of it. I think that if you can, stop Bucky Irving, contain him and Rachaad White, I think that you're putting yourself in a position to win this football game. We saw that last week with Philadelphia. I think if they can repeat that, that is the best thing for Seattle defensively in this one. And then hopping over to Tampa Bay, coming off of a home loss to the Philadelphia Eagles in a tough-fought game. I think if you're Tampa Bay in this one, I think you have to get that run game back. I think when Bucky Irving has had really good football games, they continue to just churn the yardage and move the ball more efficiently when they're a balanced offense. I think when they have to go one-dimensional or the other, then they've really struggled. You saw that against Houston. They kind of struggled when they couldn't really pass the football. You saw that last week against Philadelphia where they couldn't really run the football. So I think that's the best thing for Tampa's play a balanced offense, get that run game back and established this week. And then defensively, I mentioned that Todd Bowles is really good at simulating pressure, really good at his stunt and blitz design. I think that he's going to have to go in the bag of tricks this week to get after Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold has struggled more so when he's under pressure than when he has a clean pocket. So I think blitzing Sam Darnold is going to be the key. If you can get home, get pressure on him, force him to make mistakes, I think that bodes well for Tampa. This is a tough game to pick. Seattle's a 2.5-point favorite at home. They have the extra long rest with the Thursday night game. It's as close to a bye week as you're going to get. Playing up in Seattle's tough. I'm going to take the home team here, Seattle, to win by a field goal against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but it could go either way. I would stay away from this one personally. Moving on to our next matchup, we have the Arizona Cardinals hosting the Tennessee Titans. The Cardinals coming off of that Thursday night loss against the Seattle Seahawks. In this one, I think it's pretty simple. James Conner, done for the year with IR. Trey Benson now put on IR. The ball is in Kyler Murray's court. He needs to really, come out and have a really good game this week, drive that offense. Amari DiMercado and Michael Carter aren't going to be huge difference makers in this one, I think. And we saw him, kind of get Marvin Harrison Jr. the football more in that second half. We saw what that touchdown meant for him. In this one, he really, he needed that. And I think now that he's got some confidence back, I think that that's going to allow Arizona to really kind of tap into this passing game that really has struggled through the first month of the season. And then I think defensively here, Jonathan Gannon, you just need to pressure Cam Ward. You have a really talented D-line here in Arizona, and I think that Tennessee's really struggled to pass protect in this one. I think just throwing everything you have at Cam Ward and forcing him to make mistakes, I think is the best way for Arizona to get the upper hand defensively in this one. And then moving on to the Tennessee Titans, who are coming off being shut out on the road against the Houston Texans, still looking for their first win of the season. In all honesty, I think if you're Tennessee, they have not run the ball well at all. I don't know if Tyjae Spears is coming back off of the IR this week, but he was put on IR to start the season with a designation to return. This is the first week he can come back. But whether it's Spears and Pollard or just Pollard, you need to establish some sort of a running game because in all honesty, they have not been able to run the football at all this season. They have not provided any balance to this offense, and they're not helping out Cam Ward by not doing that. So I do think that you have to establish that balance to give Cam Ward a shot this week. And then as far as defensively goes, I think you got to play through your D-line. They did a pretty good job of getting after C.J. Stroud last week, but it just wasn't enough because the offense couldn't do anything. This D-line is really the only semblance of a shot they have of winning football games is getting after quarterbacks and making it uncomfortable. Arizona struggled to pass protect, through the first month of the season, so I think that they could have an upper hand in that matchup. But that's going to be the best way for Tennessee to get the upper hand there defensively. Looking at the line for this game, Arizona's favored by 8.5 at home. I like them to win and cover this one. Tennessee they've just been really bad to start the year, man. I like Arizona to win this one big at home. Moving on to our next matchup, another interconference matchup here. We have two teams coming off of a loss. We have the Los Angeles Chargers hosting the Washington Commanders. Chargers coming off of a loss to the New York Giants. I think if you were the Chargers, you really got Amarian Hampton going last week. He had a long touchdown run in that one. They have wanted to establish the run game over the first month of the season. It felt like that finally clicked, especially with Joe Alt out. Your pass protection is going to be hampered against, a creative defense that Dan Quinn calls over there in Washington. So I think that if you can establish the run, take some pressure off these tackles and pass protection, this is going to put your team in the best chance to win, even though Justin Herbert has played very, very well to start the season. I think that establishing the run game is the best course of action here if you are Jim Harbaugh and the Los Angeles Chargers. And then defensively, stopping the run is going to be the key. The Commanders have the second best run offense in yards per game to start the season. So I think that if you can contain their run game with the tandem of backs that they have, and whether or not Marcus Mariota or Jaden Daniels is a starting quarterback, both those guys are very mobile. I think that that's the biggest key for Los Angeles defensively. I almost just said San Diego. Bring the Chargers back to San Diego, by the way. They belong there. Get them out of L.A. And then moving over to the Commanders side of things, I think no matter who's playing quarterback, you got to lean into that run game. It's really been successful for you to start the season. The offense goes as the run game goes. They really struggle to establish it against Green Bay. I think the last three out of the 4 weeks they have been able to establish that run game. It was a close loss last week against Atlanta. I think that if you can continue to establish that with Krosky Merritt, Chris Rodriguez, Jeremy McNichols, and either Mariota or Daniels, I think that is, the way that your offense continues to, gain yardage and be able to score points. And then defensively, if you're Washington, I think that you have to attack these backup tackles here, with Joe Alt and Rashawn Slater being out. I think that you have to, attack Justin Herbert in this one and make sure that he's, off platform and off balance, because we saw the Giants have success with that last week, and I think that if you can do that, you can force turnovers here. You have a better shot of winning this game. Chargers are favored by 2.5 at home. I'm going to take the Chargers here despite the backup tackles to win this football game. I think they're just outright the better team against the Washington Commanders here. Moving on to our last afternoon matchup here, we have the Cincinnati Bengals hosting the Detroit Lions. The Bengals coming off of a brutal loss on the road to the Denver Broncos. And I think the biggest key for Cincinnati is, if you're going to have any sort of shot to winning in this game, is establishing a run game. I talked about it in the power rankings. They have 200 yards rushing the entire season. There's 22 guys with 200 or more rushing yards this season. It's just a brutal, run game for Cincinnati. If they can establish any sort of a run game, that'll give them a better opportunity to win the game, because you're not just going to win the football game throwing it with Jake Browning. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. So I think that that's the best opportunity for them. And then I think if you're Cincinnati, you just have to survive out there on defense. They haven't really done that at all to start this season. I think if you can survive and, play some bend but don't break defense against an explosive Lions offense, that's going to be your best opportunity to, win this game, hold them to field goals, not allowing touchdowns, I think is the way to go there for Cincinnati. It's easier said than done against a very good offense that Detroit has. And then for Detroit, I think, if you can establish that balance, whenever they've established balance, they've won football games. I think the one time they didn't establish balance against Green Bay, they lost. So continuing to establish balance, getting Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery going. David Montgomery had a rough week last week against Cleveland. Getting him back involved in there is going to be the best for this offense, and then continuing to get the ball to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Jameson Williams here and there, in the passing game. And then defensively, if you're Detroit, I would say stop the run, but that's really not been hard against Cincinnati to start the season. So I think, continuing to just stop that terrible Cincinnati run game, make Jake Browning beat you, I think you'll win this game by a lot of points. Detroit is favored by 10.5 on the road, rightfully so. I like them to win this game and cover, because I just don't think Cincinnati is good at all. Moving on to our Sunday Night Football matchup, we got an exciting divisional matchup here between the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. Starting off with the Buffalo Bills, who improved to 4-0 last week, beating the New Orleans Saints. I think the biggest key for the Bills is they're going to have to establish a run game against a really stout New England run defense, who is tied for second in yards per game allowed against the run this season. So I think that despite them being successful, I think James Cook has the second most yards this season running the football, besides Jonathan Taylor, and Josh Allen also accounts for that run game, so they do have the best run game in the league. It's who's going to win that matchup. Is it going to be the Pats front, or is it going to be the Bills run game? We'll see. And then I think defensively for them, you have to be able to stop the run in this game. I think that them having the 31st rush defense in the league, I think that the Patriots are going to look to take advantage of that, so they have to stop that run game and force them to be more of a drop-back pass offense, which Josh McDaniels and the Patriots don't want to do. They want to be able to run the football, set up the play-action game, and then, play the drop-back passing game from there. If you're the Patriots, who are coming off of a absolute beatdown of the Carolina Panthers, great game to watch, by the way, for me especially, being a Patriots fan, I think that you have to establish the run game. You have to take advantage of the squishy front from the Buffalo Bills. Ramondre Stevenson, Antonio Gibson, Travion Henderson need to be able to run the football this week. You need to be able to get that push against this really poor Bills run defense. And then defensively, I think it's pretty simple. Lean into your strength of stopping the run, force this team to be a drop-back pass offense, and keep Josh Allen in the pocket. Don't let him extend plays with his legs, whether it's to scramble or extend the play and make some Houdini ridiculous pass. It seems like he does one in every game against us, I swear to God. I think that's the best course of action here. Looking at the line for this one, Buffalo's favored by 8.5 at home, which I think is a little bit ridiculous, a little bit disrespectful to my team. I do think we're going to cover. I think it's going to be a touchdown or less game. That might be the homer in me, but I just think the Patriots have been playing really well the last couple of weeks, especially against Miami and Carolina last week. We were able to move the ball, too, against Pittsburgh. Just turnovers cost us that game. So I think I think I'm going to take Buffalo to win this one. I think it's going to be by less than 8 points, though. But I am going to take Buffalo and win this game. I'm not a complete homer. I do still think the Bills are going to win. Going to Buffalo is a tough place to play, but New England's going to keep it close. And our penultimate matchup of this week, we have the Jacksonville Jaguars hosting the Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. Starting off with the Jags, who got a big road win against the San Francisco 49ers last week. I think that the most successful part of this Jags offense has been the run game. I think you need to continue to lean into that. 3 of the 4 weeks it's shown up. Travis Etienne's had a really good season for the Jags. If you can continue to get him going and mix Tootin in as well, I think that you have, the best success to beat the Chiefs, especially with your inconsistent passing game that Jacksonville has showed to start the season. And I think if you're Jacksonville here, you need to tee off defensively. I think Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker have had a really good start to the season. Jacksonville's done a really good job of scheming up, their blitzes, their stunts. I think they need to do that against a weaker Chiefs O-line here to get after Mahomes, to pressure him, force him to make mistakes. I think that is the best thing that Jacksonville can do, is get Mahomes uncomfortable in this one, and they'll have a chance to win this football game. Looking at Kansas City from their side of things, I think you have to establish some sort of run game to slow down that pass rush. I think that Jacksonville's done a really good job of, pressuring the quarterback and forcing turnovers all year, and the Chiefs have not been able to run the ball at all, so I think if they can do that in this game, it would be beneficial to them in order to win this one. And then defensively, I think if you're Kansas City, if you can, take advantage of that inconsistent passing game that Jacksonville has, create a couple turnovers, put Trevor Lawrence off his spot and force him to make bad decisions, I think that you're going to have, a better opportunity to win this football game. Looking at the line here, Chiefs are favored by 2.5 on the road. I like them to win by a field goal here. I think this is going to be a pretty close game, though. I would take the under in this one. I don't think either of these offenses are equipped for a shootout, but I like Kansas City to take home this one on Monday night in Jacksonville. So that will be all for my Week 5 picks. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below, which picks you agree with, which picks you do not agree with. And stay tuned tomorrow for a quiz. I will have one up, I promise. I screwed up the recording for it last time and I didn't have it, but I will have one for you tomorrow, so stay tuned for that one. But as always, guys, enjoy the game tonight, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace. Let's hope that recorded properly.